episode number 126 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. My guest today is Nora Wendel. Nora is one of the leading worldwide experts teaching conscious communication, human connection, and feminine magnetism to women worldwide. A former 10-year chronic anxiety sufferer resulting in her having extremely dysfunctional and codependent relationships, she now writes as a VIP author for Elephant Journal and MindValley to inspire millions of women to stop their self-doubt, clear their past emotional baggage so that they can create the open, trusting, deeply intimate, and sexy relationship of their dreams. Nora's wildly adventurous upbringing in Nepal and India, where she had a pet elephant growing up, showed her how even across cultures the foundational human longing to be loved remains the same. She has written her first book, Confident, Sexy, and Wildly Free: How to Own Your Worth, Ditch the Self-Doubt, and Not Give an F What Other People Think of You, to be published early 2021. She has lived and continues to live in Bali for the past 4 years, running her online coaching empire, as well as hosting worldwide workshops and retreats all centered around femininity, sexuality, and human connection. So welcome to the podcast, Nora.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share a little bit about passion and magnetism and all of that.
First of all, I'm looking at your background. You're in Bali. I'm so jealous. Such a magical place. Talk about like passion and life, right?
Yeah, it's they call it Mama Bali because it's a very nurturing island. It's also in the tropics, which means, it's always flowering, it's always creative, there's always blossoming. And at the same time, that can also be overwhelming. So here in Bali, they say, either you're like totally welcome in or that it chucks you out.
Oh, wow. And so can you give us a background on yourself and how you got into the work that you do?
Yeah, of course. So I do relationship coaching and I also teach feminine magnetism. And it actually stemmed from my personal experience when I was in my 20s. I had a panic attack. I had chronic anxiety for 10 years. So I didn't feel confident. I lacked self-worth. I lacked purpose. I didn't feel sexy. I was just like this shell of who I wanted to be. And I know when I was younger that I was really exuberant and joyful and expressive. And then when I had my panic attack, it all disappeared because I lost trust. I lost trust in myself and in my body that I was going to be okay. And in the greater, if you want to call it, universe. And why did it happen to me was my biggest question. So this kind of 10 years of chronic anxiety really led me into personal development. On top of that, I became codependent in all of my relationships with men because I was like, I can't be alone. If I'm alone, I'm going to have anxiety and another panic attack. And so I had really unhealthy relationships. After one of my last longer term relationships, I was just like, seriously, this cannot be how to have a healthy relationship. And then I dove into Tantra. I dove into authentic relating, conscious communication, nonviolent communication, understanding emotional needs. How do you express yourself? And really about sensuality, so reconnection to myself. And now I'm here teaching all of this to women.
That sounds fabulous. Well, I'll tell you one thing. The thoughts that came to my mind as you were talking is about how when we are, first of all, there's this wealth of energy that we can always tap into, whether it's sexual or like personal or conscious. There's this wealth of energy that's always available to us. And sometimes we are so out of tune with it for whatever reason in our life. And then we look for it in all the wrong places that are kind of like dead ends and they don't really get us what we want. So how did you find how to align yourself?
I think for me, the biggest was different practices for connecting back to self. Now, for every person that may look different. And for me, it was really tuning into myself. So that could have looked like sitting with myself in the morning. Some people call it meditation. I just call it connecting to self. It definitely included movement, because I was a very shy and I turned awkward after all of this anxiety. And so it was like, okay, how do I connect to myself? Who is this Nora? And so I went to a lot of dance classes. And one of the big things I learned a lot about was contact improvisation dance, which is a form of movement, which is you dance with someone else and you're always in one point of contact with another person, but it's completely improvised, which means you're solely focused on that one point of contact, which it's a mindfulness practice. So my suggestion is anything which is a mindfulness practice for you. And it could look like walking outside in nature, but being super mindful of how are you walking, what are you hearing, how is the wind or the air feeling on your skin. But it could also be a journaling practice as long as it's mindful. And I think for me, I had a lot of stress. I had a lot of internal stress because I wasn't who I wanted to be. And it was causing me so much anxiety. And I was like, why can't I just be normal? Why can't I just be like all these other women? And that was causing me this like internal, I always say like, this is like kind of like squeezing of my insides. And it was turning me into this like hard woman because my negative self-talk was really high. And so doing these kind of practices and slowing down and just tuning back into myself, whether that was through maybe breathing. Breath work is very, very popular in Bali. I don't do breath work, but I was doing a little bit of pranayama, which is the Indian style of yogic breathing, and literally just tuning back into me and welcoming whatever was arising, not trying to negate it. Okay, so now I'm feeling angry and frustrated. Okay, now I'm anxious. And then asking myself, what do I need in this moment? In this moment, what do I really need? And maybe that was to be really angry and then I do pillow bashing. Or maybe that was, okay, go and talk to a friend and then I do that. Maybe that was just to like stand there and just, I was usually standing naked in my house and just kind of like putting some music on and then just moving my body. So all of these kind of things are just a reconnection practice.
Yeah, and so a lot of people listening, as you know, this is a fertility podcast, and a lot of people are going through either IVF or trying naturally. And, you know, with IVF, you get bloated and you have all these different shots that you have to take and you're on the schedule and you're given hormones that are like really throwing off your emotions. So the last thing, and I hear this from my patients all the time, the last thing they feel is sexy, you know, and it's like the sex becomes mechanical. It's all about baby making. It's very easy for that to happen because you get so exhausted from the whole process. So how can people kind of go back and, you know, and I'm sure it's baby steps to connect with their partners and become, again, ignite their own passion? Because I know it's always there. The potential is always there. How do we go back to that?
Such a great question. And it really relates what you mentioned back to what I also mentioned, back to stress, because it's like, I really want this to happen, right? It's like my biggest desire in life is now to become pregnant. And it's like such pressure that you then feel, and pressure is not sexy. Whoever thinks pressure is sexy, I don't know anyone who thinks pressure is sexy. And a really good person to read up more on is Esther Perel, and she talks a lot about erotic intelligence. And erotic intelligence needs spaciousness, and pressure doesn't create spaciousness. Right. So what do I actually suggest is, even though you might have all of these millions of thoughts in your head saying, I've got to do this, I've got to be on the schedule, like the pressure is building and it's compounding, can you just, you know, mentally picture that, put that in a beautiful fluffy blanket and just place it to the side in your mind for a moment, and then do something for yourself, a connective practice for yourself, and then welcome your partner in. And this could be as simple as eye gazing. Eye gazing is a beautiful, intimate practice, which when you can tune into your inner energy, just follow that feeling that comes up into you. And then you can do circular breathing together. So breathe at the same time together, inhale and exhale. And a long, deep breath actually stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which counteracts stress. And so simple practice like that can be very, very beautiful. There's another really beautiful practice, which is when you're just sitting by yourself in the morning before the whole day gets crazy and you've got all of your to-do list items, and including your injections or your tablets or whatever you need to be taking, is just sit with yourself in a really beautiful, comfortable spot. And, I like to place one hand on my heart and one hand kind of on my womb area, and just imagine a golden ball of light in my womb area. And then breathe that golden ball of light up into your heart. Maybe you want to take it all the way up and then back down. And just allow that golden ball of energy to kind of expand, and just play with that. And it's only a intentional practice. And so you can create whatever you want with it and see if it can radiate outward. I have a beautiful meditation called radiance meditation. And it's simply that. It's just feeling the excitement and the energy. And what is energy? It's simply vibrating molecules, atoms. And so just tune into that in your own body and allow it to kind of expand outwards. And that's a beautiful little calming, at the same time, energetic practice, where you can then start moving the energy around your body.
I think too, the reason why people may not even think to do that is because they may not realize just how powerful something like that can be. Just visualizing and embodying with intention, like you said, can make such a transformation in a person's consciousness. And we can really evoke this energy and bring it into our life.
100%. It's all about intentionality. What I teach most of my women is just getting rid of all the ideas that you have in your mind, which feels hard, like hard-edged, and journaling about it. So it's out of your millions of ideas that are floating around in your to-do list and have to do this, get it out onto paper. So I do what's called a brain dump, right? Set a timer for 10 minutes and nonstop write about everything that's going on in your life right now. Put it onto a piece of paper and just set it aside. And then you'll automatically feel a little bit energetically clearer, because it's not floating around in your head. It's like some, what do I want to say, abstract concepts, but it's on paper. And then you can do a little practice like that. Or then you can do a little bit of movement. I have a great playlist that's called Sensual Sundays on Spotify. You can find it if you just search on Spotify. And just allow yourself to kind of be in the moment. Because I think what's happening maybe is that you're so focused on a future event that you're no longer in the moment.
Right. Focusing on the end point rather than the journey.
Yeah.
And also, can we talk about, a lot of times people will try to fix a state of mind from their mind, but they're already in that state, so it kind of like spins on the same axis. But like, talk about movement. I thought that was very interesting, because you talk about breath and movement, and I find that just doing something with your body will shift your state of mind.
100%. So you have to think about it that we spend the majority of our day in our minds, okay? Especially if we're busy, we're working, we have goals we want to accomplish in our businesses. We've got maybe already family members around us, and it's just like, oh my God, and that's the pressure. And so our body wants attention also. And usually it manifests in some sort of aches or pains. I always say anything that's manifesting in your body is wanting your attention. Okay. So give it some attention. So let's say you do have, an aching shoulder or a neck or something like that. Just sit with it, place your hand on it, and just ask, what do you need right now? What are you asking from me? And this is the same thing that I do. I do a lot of inner child reparenting, because the relationship we have with our partners usually is the same type of relationship we had with our parents, because our subconscious. I'm actually a little bit of a neuroscience nerd.
Ooh, I love it. I'm
a neuroscience nerd, because the more books I read about it, I'm like, we're actually wired for war and not for love. And so we have to reteach ourselves how to be wired for love, because our brains and our reptilian brains, which is the first part of us that gets formed in terms of our brain stem and our brain evolution, is constantly looking for threats to our survival. And so it's always on alert. And therefore, we're actually wired for war, because it's always scanning, okay, who's going to threaten us? Is our survival going to be able to survive? And so we have to teach it that actually love is okay, love is good, love is here to protect us, because it thinks the opposite, right? We're going to get attacked, we're going to die. There was a little bit of a sidetrack there, but I find it so fascinating.
It's very important though.
And so, yeah, the body and the body and movement just brings us into the present moment and mindfulness. And I really think mindfulness helps in all areas of life, for intimacy specifically, because if you're just becoming mechanical in the act of physical intimacy, then it loses the beauty of it, and then it causes more stress to your body actually. So here's a great idea. Can you just, I know you really, really want to become pregnant, but can you just set that aside for a moment and allow yourself to reconnect with your partner? And this is where sensuality comes into a big role, because I didn't feel sensual, and I definitely was more afraid of sexuality. And in order to be more comfortable with sexuality, I had to first understand being sensual. And sensuality is simply an enriching of your life experiences through your senses. So then when you're with your
I love that. That's so good, because people think of it as, they don't really put that together that way.
Exactly. It's just an enriching of your life experience, because even right now when you're listening to this or watching this podcast, just think, okay, what are your feet feeling? Are they in shoes? Are they in socks? Are they on the ground? Can you feel the air on your skin right now where you have an exposed skin? What's the furthest sound you can hear? What's the closest sound you can hear? And so taking all of this into the bedroom or into your intimate area then, and slowing it down. So like allowing your partner to touch you really softly and breathing while you do this. So you are stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system to allow yourself to calm down. And so you can play with your senses in the intimate setting to really allow more pleasure to come up. And you don't know where that's going to lead. So if you can just set aside this whole idea of like, I need to get pregnant, I want to get pregnant, this is my biggest desire, and just allow yourself to play a little bit more with pleasure in this way.
Right. And sometimes I think that we think we will only be able to get joy once we get something achieved, but that's completely a belief that we set for ourselves, and joy can happen at any time, even while trying something that we haven't yet achieved.
Yeah, it's like the joys in the journey. And I'm totally guilty of this. I'm like, no, I want to get there, and I want to get there now.
Yeah, we all have that. Yeah.
Like, okay, wait, how much more fun is it going to be if, like, right here, right now, I'm actually exuberantly joyful and happy and enjoying this moment for what it is. And this is ultimately what mindfulness, what meditation, what Buddhism, it's so many philosophies are teaching this, because we are so driven as humanity that we forget actually when we reach that, if we haven't enjoyed the journey, we're just going to be like, oh, what next? It's unsatisfactory.
Yeah. And when you talk about mindfulness, I think a lot of people think of mindful meditation, which of course that's part of it. But mindfulness you're talking about is also like in the moment of active mindfulness, like you're being aware of everything in your life.
Yes, it's a simple, and this is where I took it from Tantra teachings, which is simply how alive can you feel in every moment? Right here, right now, how alive can you feel? And what I often say to my clients, my female clients who suffer a lot of lack of self-worth is I always say, and like negative body image issues, I always say your body is doing everything it can in this moment to keep you alive. It really is. Yeah. And when you
it is, yeah.
that, then how can you not be grateful and thankful and feel joy and wow, my body is doing everything it can so that I can be here in this moment.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, a lot of times it's a conflicting emotion for people going through the fertility journey, because they feel like something's wrong. And you talked about how one of the ways that you really connected with yourself is through self-love and finding that self-love. And how did you do that? And how did you actually like find that back? Because I know that sometimes it's easier said than done, but how do you really translate that?
Okay, self-love is such a big term online nowadays, right? In the last 2 years,
Yes.
everyone's like, self-love, this and this and this. And then as I was like thinking about it, I'm like, I don't even know what self-love really is. Like, I understand it, but again, it's that disconnect between cognitive understanding and embodied feeling. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what actually is self-love? And then when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I prefer to call it self-appreciation. And it's so
I
much
love that.
digestible in that way. Because if you think about the word appreciation, it means to increase. Okay. So what I
Right.
is, okay, what can you appreciate about yourself? And so start an appreciation practice, which is different from a gratitude practice, because I do self appreciation, which means what can you say that about yourself that you're really appreciating? So write like 3 to 10 things down every day. And this can be as simple as, I really appreciate that I got out of bed today. I really appreciate that I answered that call. Or that it can be bigger things like, I really appreciate how strong I am and how determined I am. Okay?
Mm-hmm. I
It
love
can
that.
really vary, but gratitude usually tends to be outward and external, whereas self appreciation tends to be internal. And so when you start appreciating yourself daily, 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 you'll start to realize, oh, like I actually do, love myself a little bit more. And for me, the negative self-talk was really the kind of like the contrast of like me trying to love myself and I'm like putting myself down, because that's what negative self-talk is. It's you putting
Mm-hmm.
yourself down because you're ultimately comparing yourself to some idea of what you should be out there, because social media, parental influence, societal influence. So it's like, okay, if you can kind of just take a step back and really appreciate how beautifully you are showing up in this moment, that will then start to foster this sense of internal, you know what, I'm actually doing really well.
Right.
This, I appreciate you. And I just, and I you hear this on the internet over and over again, and it's just so true. You would never talk to your best friend or your partner the way that how meanly you talk to yourself. And so if you can just catch yourself, and I started doing this in the mirror, a couple of years ago when I was really feeling very low about myself, and I just look at myself in the mirror and I just talk to myself as if I were my own best friend, or if my best friend were standing there, or my lover, and like showering words of appreciation, because ultimately we are doing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yet
It's
we're
true.
not able to recognize that because we feel the pressure, or because we have false stories and identities around ourselves that we created. And a lot of it may be created through childhood, which is again why I'm such a big
True. Yeah.
proponent of inner child reparenting, because the relationship you had to your parents caused you to internalize some sort of beliefs around yourself, which generally aren't true. And if you wanted to get into a little bit of inner child, I would love for you just to sit and connect to a younger version of yourself, and just ask, what do you need? What were you searching for that you didn't get? Let's say you're 7 years old or 3 years old, and just ask that and just validate that emotional, it's usually an emotional need. Validate that emotional need. And a simple validation often allows the claws of it in you to kind of ungrip slightly.
Yes. It's amazing how validation is such a healing it's such a healing tool, and as soon as a person feels heard, it really is, it's hearing yourself. As soon as a person feels heard, I see, even like with my patients, their shoulders just relax. They feel a weight lifted off their shoulders.
Yeah, and it comes from our foundational, every single human on this planet, it comes from our foundational longing to be loved. Each
Yeah.
one of us wants to be loved. And everything we do in life is because we want to be loved. So the car you
Yeah.
drive, the job that you want to go, the partner that you choose, it's all because we want love. And so when you can recognize that in yourself, and understand your, I call it childhood trauma. No, it doesn't matter if you had the best childhood or not. There's some stories and emotional needs that you wanted that simply were not met, that you then
Right.
internalize that. And yeah, I think you're so right in what you said. It's we all want to be seen, heard, and appreciated, and
Yeah.
underneath that is because we want to be loved for who we are.
Yeah, without a doubt. So now you talked about Tantra. I find it so fascinating, Tantra. And I know that some of the listeners may not even really know what it is. Like people have heard about it. And I think that some people even might have a false impression of what it really is. So can you talk about Tantra, like what you've learned about it?
Sure. So I'm not a tantra expert by no means. So disclaimer right there. However,
Okay.
my dad is a yoga philosopher, so I've gone to his classes and studied with him. In what's tantra known in the West is very much a sexual based tantra, and yes, sex is a part of it, but it's not all of it. Tantra was it was almost so it came from India, and it was a branch of philosophy that was very kind of cutthroat and was all about I don't want to I'm like thinking of my dad right here, and I'm like, I'm trying not to mess this up, Dad.
It's okay.
It was very much just about trying a different path in order to reach different states of being. Okay. And what I understand and what I've taken from my readings and discussions around with my dad, it's very much an energetic practice. Okay. Which is what I was saying about how alive can you feel, right? That would be a very tantric philosophy because it brings you back to presence. It brings you back to the energetics of the universe. And so they did, tantrics did very, I want to say cutthroat, but it's not the right word. They did very, I don't know what word to use, but, they do things like meditate on charnel grounds, on cremation grounds, okay? And it was all kind of practices to kind of cut their ego, to kind of cut their what they thought reality was. Okay. So what happened in the West is through Osho and all of this, it became a very sexual practice, and it is a part of it, but it's not all of it. So what I would love for you to kind of be curious about is the energetics about it. It's okay, how alive can I feel in this moment? In the bedroom, it's also an energetic practice. How can I connect energetically with my partner? And that is through eye gazing, that is through intentional breathing together, that is through consciously seeing, can I move energy between us?
Yeah. With us, in Chinese medicine, we talk about the yin and the yang, which are two opposites. And when they're in harmony together, that's when life force is really abundant. And that's really the key. And I think about how we see everything in the yin and yang, you can see it and apply it to everything in life. And, having that spark between the male and the female is so important. And to do it energetically before even going right to the physical. I talk a lot with my patients about that because it's just so important to really get that connection. And that's where you talk about magnetism. That's how I feel when you put your hands even together, you can start to feel a magnetism. So just having something like being around a person that you love and just spending time and being present with them increases that passion and that magnetism.
100%. And going back to what Esther Perel also said, is that specifically for couples who have been in longer term relationships, eroticism usually dies, okay? Because eroticism needs spaciousness. And so if you are feeling very frustrated with your partner and you're not feeling connected to your partner, and maybe you're becoming really cribby and angry and kind of snippy at them all the time, create some spaciousness between you, and maybe take a day away. Maybe you can take a weekend away. And during that weekend, remind yourself why you're with this person. Remind yourself why you were so attracted to this person in the beginning, and cultivate those feelings of love again. Because understandably, if you're on your fertility journey and maybe it's not working out and you're feeling disappointed and the pressure is there, then you're going to, blame yourself, blame your partner. What's going on? Blaming the universe, like I did when I had my panic attack and then my anxiety. And so just create a little bit of spaciousness in your life to kind of reconnect to those deeper feelings of why are you doing this? Why you love your partner so much? How amazing you are. And that's spaciousness will create that erotic tension with your partner again. So when you do come back to him, you'll feel so grateful. I said him, but I meant them, okay? Being, welcoming everyone here. So yeah, you'll like enjoy them and just be like, yes, now I remember again. Let's reconnect. And then you can do something like eye gazing. You can stand in front of them and just breathe together and just reconnect. Like honestly, eye gazing, looking into each other's eyes and allowing yourself to experience all of the emotions that come up. So not negating what's coming up. Your emotions and experiences are and feelings are valid. There's no right or wrong emotion. So standing in front of them and just looking into each other's eyes and being silent, okay? And noticing what is arising and simply welcoming it. So validating your own feelings and experiences in the moment. And then taking a breath together and maybe another breath together. And then going maybe in for a hug or just being like soft and gentle with each other. It's a beautiful reconnection exercise.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there's something called entrainment, which it's a real thing that we start to entrain with the people that we're together and yeah, through breath work and eye gazing and really connecting. So I think that's amazing. And I wanted to ask you about your book. I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, so I wrote a book last year and during COVID, and I just sat down one day. I joined like a book writing retreat, and in 5 days I had my book, and it's called
Oh, that's amazing.
Confident, Sexy, and Wildly Free. And it's my personal journey of how I actually became this confident, sexually empowered, and free woman. And it's literally, I call it a playbook. Okay. It's like takes you through, it has 8 chapters, 8 different kind of areas you focus on in your life. And it's for women who like want to ditch the self-doubt. They stop wanting to be such a people pleaser and caring what other people think, because that means you're not actually true to who you are. And so it should be released. I'm actually waiting for my proof copies to arrive here in Bali so that I can be like, have the final go ahead. And then it'll be up on Amazon. It'll come with a whole meditations and EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, tapping videos. Like it's a holistic book where you're going to dive in and you're going to be able to like go through each chapter and really understand more about yourself and where you might be feeling blocked or stuck. And a big part of it is inner child or parenting.
Oh, I love it. It sounds so great. It sounds, one of the things that also comes to mind, it's not just self-love, but self-trust, right? Trusting yourself.
Yeah, and that was a big issue that I didn't even realize I had when I had my anxiety. It was only towards the end of like my journey around completing my anxiety. It was like I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself that I was going to be okay, or that the universe, the greater good was looking out for me, which also meant that I didn't trust anyone around me. I didn't trust men, right? It's if you don't have self-trust. And self-trust is really linked to confidence. So I was a really big confidence coach for women for a long time, because what is confidence? Confidence is the internal belief that you're going to be okay no matter what. If you have confidence, you're going to go for it in life.
Right. Oh, how amazing. That sounds so profound. So for people who want to find you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. So it's my full name at Nora Wendel, and slide into my DMs, say hello. I send voice notes and video messages all the time because it's simply like I love connecting. It's like what I teach, conscious communication and connection, right? Otherwise, you can have a browse of my website. I've got lots of blog posts on my blog all about sexuality and intimacy, how to squirt, like all things really fun and interesting. Yeah, those are the two main places you can reach out to me.
And I'll be putting this on the episode notes for anybody who wants to go back and look. And this was such a great conversation. I think it's so needed. It's something that people really thirst for and yearn for, but they don't know how to get, or sometimes don't even realize like that's what's missing, that we can like rekindle the fire of our passion, of our life, and just ignite it.
Yes, and that is what like this magnetism is. When you're like magnetic, you're just like you're showing up in your fullness without any fear of or constriction of who you think you can or cannot be, because you have that self-confidence, that self-trust, that self-appreciation to be who you are in this moment. And that doesn't mean you're going to make mistakes, but you've got that inner knowing that you'll be okay, and whatever happens, you'll be able to deal with it in yourself. And another thing, if you go onto my website, there's some freebies, and you can download the radiance meditation that I talked about, and that's a beautiful
awesome.
Connective meditation.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Nora. It was such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And let me just share that, although everybody who's listening to this, that just take a really big deep breath and put your hand on your heart and just allow that deep breath, that exhalation, just to relax you, and just know that everything is always working out for you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Nora. So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.